Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new Saturn day. Today I've got a very special video lined up for you as we take a look at the very last Working Designs game I've yet to cover on the Saturn, SEGA Ages. SEGA Ages compiles Outrun, Afterburner of Two, and Space Harrier together in one great package. Now before we jump in, there's a lot of confusion behind the name SEGA Ages. You see, in Japan, SEGA Ages actually refers to an entire line of video games. For the Saturn, for example, Space Harrier, Outrun, Afterburner of Two, Fantasy Zone, Power Drift, and more were released on standalone discs and sold at extremely affordable prices. Why Sega did this was with the advent of the Saturn, they had the first opportunity to release arcade-perfect versions of their earlier arcade hits. Sometimes these games would have arranged soundtracks and other little touches here and there, but the concept overall was to give fans a means of experiencing arcade-perfect versions of classic arcade games. There are slight differences between those particular individual releases and the ones included in the SEGA Ages collections that Working Designs put out. Per the translation notes that Working Designs includes in all of their games, the mixed tracks from the original soundtracks were omitted to make room on the disc for all three games. So that means you can expect arranged music tracks. And from what I can recall, Outrun, that was released in Japan, had both the arcade original 30 frames per second and a smooth mode that boosted it up to 60 frames per second. I can't recall if that option is available in this particular version, as all I could find in the options was a Japanese version and an overseas version in the game options. I'm fairly confident that this version only supports 60 frames per second, but correct me if I'm wrong, ladies and gentlemen. The three games included here are all true arcade classics. Outrun itself would make this title worth buying, but getting Afterburner of Two and Space Harrier included makes it a must-have title. Outrun is one of the best arcade racing games ever made. You race around a wide assortment of interconnected tracks that look downright amazing. I absolutely loved the fork in the road concept, where you decide where you want to go next. The road dips and turns and raises depending on the location, and there are always great environmental elements throughout. As you race against the clock, you also must pay attention to enemy cars on the road. When they're not out to get you, the track itself is. I could literally go on for hours about this game, as it was one of the very early 80s arcade games that I spent a ridiculous amount of time with back in the day. And wouldn't you know it, but the next game on the list is another game I spent a ridiculous amount of time in the arcades with, which is Space Harrier. I've already done several reviews from the Space Harrier franchise over the years, but I can't get enough of this series. You know the drill by now, you fly around the screen destroying everything in your path. It's really that simple, right? Wrong. This game requires tons of practice to get good at, and having an arcade-perfect version is amazing. I'm always impressed with this one, particularly when you realize just how simple it is. There's one action button, and the rest of the controls are for movement. It's incredible. And the final game on the collection is the only one that I actually didn't spend that much time with in the arcades, and that's Afterburner of Two. It plays very much like Space Harrier, except that you have somewhat deeper controls. You have access to a Vulcan gun, missiles, and the ability to roll, which is always nice. Much like the other two games featured in this compilation, the more you practice, the better you get. All three of these games have never looked better. They are amazing arcade ports, even with the arranged music. One day I'll cover each one of these separately as part of the Japanese SEGA Ages games, because they all deserve that extra little bit of coverage. I would also love to show you guys the differences between the 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second versions. SEGA Ages is extremely hard to find in North America, for quite a few different reasons. For one, it was released in late 1997, meaning that's actually a late SEGA Saturn release. It was released by Working Designs, whom need no introduction, and it's probably their least known release on the Saturn. The print run wasn't very high, and as such, prepare to spend well over $100 on this one if you can even find it.